Welcome to our webinar today on beech leaf disease from biology to treatment. Just want to let you know that this session is being recorded and it will be shared on our YouTube channel after this webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can enter them, in the Q&A panel. You'll see that at the top of your screen, the two little speech bubbles that says Q&A. Enter them there and we'll either answer your questions as the webinar is going on or we'll answer them after the webinar is completed if time permits. Our webinar today is being led by Lalemant's Allison Windmill. She's a field solutions specialist for forestry and woody crops. And now I will pass it off to Allison to start the webinar.
Okay, great. Thanks, Adriana. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar exploring beech leaf disease from biology to treatment. As Adriana said, I'm Allison Windmill, the field solutions specialist for forestry and woody crops here at Lalemant Plant Care. Essentially, my role in the company is running the research and providing technical support to the forestry and woody crop markets, just so you know who I am and where I'm coming from. And so without further ado, then let's get the webinar started. So today's presentation is going to cover what is beech leaf disease, its history and distribution, the signs and symptoms, impacts on trees and forests, and management options available here in Canada. So to start things off, I just thought we could kind of briefly go right to the basics here as we are talking about beech and beech leaf disease, and just giving a quick review of the beech family, as beech leaf disease can affect a variety of different beech species. However, American beech is the preferred host in this case. American beech is a fairly large tree. It can measure up to about 25 meters in height. It can also be very long-lived. It is often easily recognizable by that smooth gray bark and very unique leaves, which have those straight veins where each vein ends in a tooth. American beech is often found on the landscape with sugar maple, yellow birch, and eastern hemlock. However, it's readily found in the urban environment in a variety of different locations as well, from woodlots to parks to boulevards, different kinds of private property, and many other locations as well. It's an incredibly important tree species from a variety of ecological standpoints, but in a forested setting, it's an important mast and wildlife tree, and as well as a critical habitat tree. It provides a very important food source for many animals, including black bears with those beech nuts, as well as providing that habitat for the species as well. And unfortunately, this tree is already a target for beech bark disease, which is at various stages throughout the province of Ontario. And now, of course, it's further impacted by beech leaf disease. So not only is beech itself under attack, so to speak, it's compounded by both of these diseases. And then if we factor in some of the other forest health issues on the landscape that are specifically affecting these mast and wildlife trees together, we really do have a compounding issue. And not to give you a message of doom and gloom, I just, am kind of painting the picture, just one of understanding really how important it is, the work that we all do together to monitor and manage threats to forest health. So diving specifically then into beech leaf disease, then we can better understand it and how it specifically affects our beech trees. So it has been determined that the primary cause of damage is from a foliar nematode called Littleincus crenadii, subspecies McCannii. However, I recently heard that the scientists are actually dropping that subspecies, the McCannii, from the name. But essentially, the nematode can affect beech trees of any age, species, or condition. But to my understanding, it is limited to the beech family. And this graphic that you see here is from Rainbow Ecoscience, and it depicts the disease cycle of beech leaf disease. So it's believed that one of the pathways of spread of these nematodes are birds or insects. However, the exact vectors of spread are still very much under research and they're not entirely known or understood. But we do know that they consist of both biotic and abiotic vectors. So it also includes wind as a vector of spread, especially if moisture is present. But in any case, no matter how it spreads, if we look at the diagram here, we can see that once the nematode arrives on a beech, they then infect the buds in the autumn season and begin their feeding. And that feeding continues throughout the fall and winter, which causes damage. And then when those leaves from the damaged buds emerge in the spring, they're emerging symptomatic. So that dark green banding that you see in the image is a direct characteristic symptom of that feeding in the buds, as well as their activity in the spring and summer when those nematodes feed on the inner tissue of the leaves. This cycle then repeats from number 4 to number 1, or from number 4 to number 5. And what you see there in number 5 is that when enough buds are infected, the tree can fail to leaf out in the spring and subsequent mortality can occur. In general, this could be between 1 to 6 seasons. The time from initial infection to mortality depends on the size and health of the tree. So as I mentioned, this disease cycle from Rainbow, it gives us really a good visual and understanding of what's happening, especially since the nematodes themselves are microscopic, so we can't see them with the naked eye. And so having a visual like this helps us to see exactly what's going on and kind of understand that cycle when we can't physically see the pest itself. So beech leaf disease was first identified in Ohio in 2012, and then later in Ontario in 2017 in Elgin County. It has since spread throughout most of the regions in southern Ontario, affecting both natural and planted landscapes, including nurseries. It's also spread across much of the northeastern United States. And as I mentioned earlier, this disease affects beech trees of all sizes, from saplings to mature specimens, and can cause mortality in young trees within just a few years. And like I said, just kind of reiterating that the primary species impacted by beech leaf disease is American beech, although cases have been reported in European beech and other ornamental varieties as well. Ongoing research, like I said, it has discovered that the causal agent is this invasive foliar nematode, this Litholinchus crenadii, and lots of research is happening right now to kind of further understand this pest and to further investigate those vectors of spread so that we can kind of better understand how it's moving through the landscape. But if we look at the map here, the range of American beech is primarily from central Ontario and eastward, as well as covering much of the northeastern United States, which is overlapping very well with the map in this photo here for where beech leaf has been confirmed up until 2024. And if we take a closer look at the province of Ontario specifically, you can see that the spread has been quite rapid from 2017 to 2025. This map shows the upper and single-tier municipalities where beech leaf disease has been confirmed and what year the detection was from 2017 to 2025. The surveys that resulted in this map or this data here, they're part of the Ontario Forest Health Surveys, where the M&R surveys for a variety of abiotic and biotic factors affecting forest health, and one of those is, of course, beech leaf disease. And so in this map in particular, in case it's too small for you to see there, the new finds or the 2025 finds are colored in red. And so as of 2025, a total of 26 municipalities had confirmed cases of beech leaf disease. The 2025 data gives us a really good idea of what's happening in the province. And the results of these surveys, they're always delivered at the annual Ontario Forest Health Review for any of you that are interested or may have attended in the past. But the annual results are also published as well. So you can keep an eye out for that if you're interested. So we've seen that map then from the MNR, and now I wanted to get into what the signs and symptoms are so that we can learn kind of what to look for and help scout for it when we're out and about as well. So you've probably noticed in several graphics now that dark interveinal banding, which is really the primary and most easily distinguishable feature of what to look for. It appears early on the beech leaves, signaling that initial infection. And the affected leaves can curl, they can become distorted and develop almost like a leathery texture as the disease progresses. There can also be reduced bud development and premature leaf drop. And sometimes the early symptoms can be more difficult to see in certain cultivars compared to others. It can also sometimes be confused with things like a nutrient deficiency or a herbicide damage. Sometimes even anthracnose looks similar. But one thing that's important to note, and I'll talk about it again when it comes to the management, is the fact that the damage is done in the buds over winter. So the symptoms you see, like the banding, they're present right at the bud break, and then they're there for the whole summer. So they won't change until the following season. So that's kind of really important to note when you're distinguishing between, these kind of lookalikes and what else it might be. And just to give you an idea of what's happening on that microscopic level that we can't see with the naked eye, Dr. Matt Borden from Bartlett Research Lab, they did some research and found approximately 3,000 live nematodes from just a half square inch of symptomatic leaf tissue. So that's a lot of nematodes and a lot of pressure on these trees. And I'm not sure exactly under what conditions or level of infestation that research was done, but it just gives you an idea of what's possible. 3,000 live nematodes in just a half a square inch of symptomatic leaf tissue is quite a lot. On an individual tree level, the premature leaf drop from beech leaf disease can lead to sparse canopies and therefore reduced photosynthesis, which weakens the tree over time, causing energy deficits and tree decline. When considering young trees, they exhibit stunted growth and are typically the ones that die first within a few years of the infection. And mature trees will experience dieback and eventual mortality as well. And as stated earlier, unfortunately, beech leaf disease can kill mature trees, as soon as 4 to 6 years after the initial infection. So for beech, the stored energy is particularly important because a good portion of the stored energy reserve is used to fund the growth ring of the following year. So defoliation has a significant impact on next year's growth by limiting that stored energy. And if we look more kind of on a landscape level or a forest level impact, the chronic infection of beech leads to that canopy thinning and increased vulnerability, which can affect and disrupt forest composition. I mentioned this at the beginning of the presentation, but beech is a very important tree on the landscape, especially from an ecological point of view. So the decline of beech really impacts ecosystem dynamics, especially when you're considering what an important mass tree and wildlife tree it is. And the fact that this issue is further compounded by the fact that beech are already under a lot of stress and pressure from beech bark disease, which, that's been present for quite a while on our landscape to varying degrees depending on the geography. So kind of in summary, then, beech leaf disease has quite a big impact on individual trees and the landscape and ecosystems alike. So when it comes to management options for beech leaf disease, the first thing would be for active monitoring and early detection so that you know if you have it and where it is on the landscape. At a specific tree level, having inventory to know where your beech is on the landscape that you manage is key. And then routine tree health and maintenance or tree inspections of those known beech. It's also great to include the community in these initiatives as well. The Invasive Species Center has a new beech leaf disease monitoring network, which engages citizen scientists. So that's another great monitoring tool and one that you can find more information on in their website. There's also things like restricting the movement of beech and beech material, including nursery stock that could help slow the spread as the research continues on those vectors of spread as well. And beech leaf disease is not a regulated pest, so it's important to follow the best practices to reduce the spread of the disease. I'll mention a few more of those kind of closer to the end of the presentation. But just basically everybody kind of doing their part, especially with many aspects of this disease still under research. Everybody kind of playing a role in reducing the spread together is critical. And so when we're considering management tools of treatment, currently the only product that's registered in Canada for the use against beech leaf disease is Arbortect 20S. It's available for use in the province of Ontario only under an emergency use registration. And Lalemant Plant Care is the Canadian distributor of Arbortect. And so I'll spend a few minutes now to cover that product and how it can be used against beech leaf disease. So briefly on the product itself, Arbortect 20S is a systemic fungicide with a 20% thiabendazole formulation. It's primarily used on American elms and has been around in Canada for a few decades. It's been used as a preventative treatment for Dutch elm disease on thousands of elms across the country now. But what I'll, of course, focus on today is its emergency use registration for beech leaf disease, which was approved by the PMRA for use in the province of Ontario from this past July 4th, 2025 to July 3rd, 2026. And just a note on that, as that July date is coming up pretty quickly. The submission for a full label amendment is underway. So please, feel free to check in with us at any time and we'll let you know if and when there are any updates on that front. And so we're often asked about Arbortect or thiabendazole being a fungicide. So, okay, if it's a fungicide, then how does it work against nematodes? And so the answer to that is that thiabendazole is an anthelmintic, meaning it has nematocidal properties, which essentially prevents the worms from growing or multiplying. And the active ingredient of thiabendazole was originally developed as a dewormer in the veterinary world for cattle. And while I'm not sure if it's used for that use anymore, but in any case, I hope that kind of helps to provide some insight and clarity for you on the question of it being a fungicide, but used and having efficacy against nematodes. So before the emergency use came through, there was no prior treatment available for beech leaf disease in Canada. And Arbortect itself is applied through the macro infusion system into the root flares. And so essentially what this means is that it's a relatively large volume of solution that's infused at a very low pressure into the root system, and then that gets translocated up through the conductive tissue of the tree and into the canopy as well for an even and complete dispersal. For beech leaf disease, the application window is once every 2 years for symptomatic trees. So it's not a preventative as it is with Dutch elm disease. Rather, it's used once the infection is present. So that's a major difference there for anybody who may have used Arbortect in the past for Dutch elm disease. There are some other specific application recommendations for treating beech which differ from our guideline for elms. And these are all things that if someone is interested in doing the application and you're a licensed pesticide applicator, then I would encourage you to please reach out to us directly, and we would provide you the appropriate training to you in order to conduct the injections specific to beech. Yeah, so please let us know, and there's just a few kind of minor differences, and we'd be happy to share that with you. So macro infusion itself is a process that's been around for a very long time and has a very long history. So this is just a new use for it, essentially. And when we're looking at beech leaf disease specifically, the treatment window is once the tree is fully leafed out post-infection through summer and early fall. And for best efficacy, it's recommended to treat from that full leaf expansion through late July and early August, but avoiding treating trees with thin or partial canopies early in the season. And so the reason for the recommendation of treating in that summer window is that you want to target the nematodes when they're present in the leaf tissue before they've started to migrate back to the buds. And so, that's all part of the research that's ongoing with understanding the life cycle of the disease and of the nematodes. So that is why we just want to hit them where we know that they're present in that leaf tissue. And so then the last point that I would like to say really regarding the treatment is that since the application is post-leaf flush, when the tree is fully leafed out and through the summer, the banding that you saw in all the previous slides, that will remain for the season, even if it has been treated, as that damage was already done in the buds like over winter leading up into the treatment season. So it won't be until the following year that you'll see the reduction in the banding, as the treatment would have knocked back that nematode population. So I just feel like this is an important note to perhaps explain when it comes to managing expectations for treatment, as perhaps some people may be alarmed if they get their tree treated, but then the damage is still present a week later. Because that feeding happens over winter in the buds and the leaves then flush out with the banding, it is there for that season. So, then you'll see the effects of the treatment the year after. And while I'm not going to go into how to do the actual injections at this time, as that's part of our product and application training specific for customers, I wanted to show you a snapshot of the dose rate table. So for anyone who is familiar with the product for Dutch elm disease, you'll see that significantly less water is required for these injections on beech for beech leaf disease. And that typically allows for faster uptake when you are treating beech. And additionally, the minimum diameter permitted for treatment according to the emergency use label is 13 centimeters dp. So tree injection timing and uptake can be affected by a variety of factors such as overall tree condition. If proper injection methods were followed, the weather, the soil conditions, if there was proper distribution of the injection sites, these are all just factors to remember if you are doing injections or considering doing them. And we cover this as well as the actual process of how to conduct the injections themselves in our training. So I won't spend any more time on that at this moment. So really the last part of the webinar today then that I want to leave you with is to highlight some of the great research that's been done in support of the use and efficacy of Arbortect against beech leaf disease. And this work was done by Rainbow Ecoscience and Bartlett Tree Research Lab together in the United States. And so here's an example of some of the research where the picture that you see there is from Dr. Matthew Borden, again from Bartlett Tree Research Lab. So what you're seeing is we have a beech stand here where beech leaf disease is present, and the tree on the left that says UTC, that stands for untreated control, where the tree has beech leaf disease, but it was not treated. And on the right, that also had beech leaf disease, but it was treated with Arbortect. And so these photos were taken the first season after treatment, which is what I was trying to explain to you in that previous slide about waiting to see the results until the following year. And the trial here was done in Hillsborough Township in New Jersey. And the graph that you see is from the same trial, but a different site, which shows the effect of Arbortect used as a root flare injection on the nematodes present in dormant beech buds. So it's very visual, that reduction in the population for those that were treated on the left and those that were not treated on the right. And the research has shown a reduction in nematodes along with symptoms in the trees and subsequent reduction and further dieback as a result of beech leaf disease as well. This research is ongoing with Rainbow Ecoscience and Bartlett Tree Research Lab, and I heard in a recent webinar from Rainbow that some of that research will be available hopefully in the next several months. So please keep in touch with us as we are closely in touch with them if you're interested in that, and we'd be happy to keep you posted. So that really wraps up the webinar for today, exploring the foliar nematode Litholinchus carnatii and the resulting issue known as beech leaf disease. So we covered its history, its spread, the presence in Ontario, and the management using Arbortect and the macro infusion system. And one last thing that I would like to say is that, the presence of beech leaf disease is still being mapped and monitored across the province. So I encourage you to report any sightings, through resources such as the Invasive Species Center. They have a reporting tool right on their homepage, or other things like EdMaps. And of course, just always follow best practices when you're out in the field, and in areas with infestations to clean your equipment, clean your clothes, do your part to help to reduce the spread. You could even boot brush, scrape off your boots to ensure that nothing is traveling with you. All of these are just good practice in general for any issue affecting forest health. And there's a wealth of knowledge about this pest in particular, but lots of others as well through organizations like the Invasive Species Center, the province, and of course through our website as well. So I welcome anyone who's online today to please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about beech leaf disease itself, or of course about treating it with Arbortect. And I'll leave you here with our email to reach out. I'm directly linked onto this email so you can reach us there. And I want to thank everyone so much today for participating, and staying with us here to hear all about beech leaf disease. So I think with that, we can open it up to review the questions that may have come in if they haven't been answered already. And we have a few plant care specialists on the line as well to help answer anything. So thank you again, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Allison, for that great presentation. So like I said, there's the Q&A panel at the top where you can enter in any questions that you may have.
They said, is there any side effect too? I'm going to guess that that's in relation to a side effect from Arbortect 20S. No, there's no additional side effects from that.
And another came in, one is the canopy dieback threshold.
You want to hand them this, Al?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can check in with Rainbow on that. If you want to send us an email to the support email for that, I can let you know. Ryan, you might have something further to add.
There shouldn't be a canopy dieback threshold the same as there is with EAB. With EAB, that's more in relation to the fact that the tree's becoming girdled and we can't save what has happened. But, trees themselves, successive years of heavy dieback in the canopy will eventually lead to mortality. So I don't think it's so much as canopy dieback that year, but multiple years will eventually lead to it, right?
Yeah, and I think they're just recommending too, like if it is a thin or a partial canopy, just don't treat right away when the leaves flush out. That was the recommendation on the best practices, was just to wait to treat just a little bit further into the summer for that. And I see the next question below that. Are there any options for under 13 centimeters DBH? At this point in Canada, no, there are no other options for trees smaller than 13 centimeters.
Yeah. That will more than likely be if something of a spray comes out, but under 13 centimeters is a pretty small tree for a macro infusion injection.
Yeah. So the next question there is, do we need to ask for a special permit like in Ontario to use Arbortect 20S in Quebec to treat for beech leaf disease? So right now the Arbortect is only the emergency use is only covered through Ontario. So I don't believe that there's, a permit or anything that you could apply for to kind of bypass that. It's registered only in this province for use. However, the full label amendment that has been applied to would be for Canada. So it's just that emergency use that's restricted to the province, if I understand it correctly. So to stay tuned for that. And Ryan, you had something to add there.
Yeah, I was just going to put an additional note that I don't believe that it's been found in Quebec unless there's not been a release yet on something, and maybe you know something more than us, but it's not been found in Quebec yet. And remember, this is a reactionary treatment, not a preventative treatment. So if it's not
Exactly.
there and it's not showing symptomatic on that tree, there's no need to treat at the moment.
Exactly. Yeah. So in terms of Quebec, Ryan's exactly right. To our knowledge, it hasn't been found in Quebec yet. So, just keep an eye or stay in touch with us as well, and for when that full label amendment does come through. And if you think you found it, then please report it so that we can get a better understanding of where it is.
100%. Right now, it seems to have just kind of skipped over Quebec, right? So
Yeah. For now.
for now.
Again, thank you everyone for taking the time and spending this morning with us. Again, if you have any questions, you can email the support email or call us toll free. We'll be happy to answer them. Have a good day, everyone.